Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today for the second part in my three-part series on time management. If you watched the first video, you know that I'm taking a little bit of a different view of time management. So this video and this series is not going to offer you, any kind of crazy techniques. I'm not trying to sell you a system or an organizer or anything like that. Really, this series is really geared towards how we can look at time management holistically and build organizations that really support our employees' ability to manage their time effectively. When we kind of walk it back a little bit, I think the biggest issue that we're really trying to get to with time management techniques is getting time to focus and prioritize on the important work. And you'll hear me say that a lot. The important work, in my definition, is work that moves the company, its mission, its products, its people forward. So it's not, oh, you used the wrong code on an expense report. It's about work that is productive, that moves the company forward, that moves the company's people forward, its mission forward. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do from an organizational perspective. So if you're like me, at some point in your career, you've probably struggled with some time management, or you've managed individuals who seem to really struggle to complete things on time, to be able to concentrate and prioritize. Now, in the best organizations, what we do is we send them to classes, or we bring in somebody externally to speak and teach them techniques on how to better manage their time and their prioritization. And that's all well and good. There are some really good techniques and strategies out there. The problem is, we send our employees to these sessions or these books or whatever it might be, and then we send them back into an office that has not changed. So all of the norms and expectations are still the same. And so what happens is, you get to sometimes even as little bit as 4 hours in the office, and all of a sudden they're back to their old ways. And it's because the environment isn't supportive of what they need in order to do work that matters. And so what I want to talk about is some of the techniques that I found in my research and how we can build organizations that support that important focus and prioritization that we need for important work. So the first example, I found is I did some really interesting research into what General Mills and Google are doing. So General Mills and Google are, very different companies. General Mills is, they make a lot of different food products. I think one of their most popular is Hamburger Helper. And then, of course, Google is Google. Well, what's interesting is both companies have been implementing mindfulness techniques at work. And what they do is they offer employees the ability to learn how to be mindful, how to build their concentration and their abilities to prioritize, how to better handle stress in the moment and things like that. And there has been a lot of very positive results with that. They've got meditation rooms at their facilities. And I particularly find General Mills interesting because it's based here in the Midwest, in Minneapolis. And so it's not just some kind of new age Silicon Valley, thing or whatever. So very interesting research and information on that, and I've linked to that in the text on my post here. So I think that's one thing that organizations can do is, to try and provide their teams not only with the training and ability to focus and prioritize, but the organizational support for it by providing the classes, by providing meditation rooms and things of that nature. So the other thing I think that organizations can do is really realize that work, especially the important work that we want our teams to be doing, doesn't always occur at the office. So I know that probably sounds, common sense. Who doesn't know that? But I think it's an important thing that we have to remind ourselves and our organizations of. Many employees, and again, there's a link in the blog post to some research on this, but many people report that they are much more efficient, that they are more creative and more innovative when they change their environment. So it doesn't necessarily mean working from home. It could be, maybe taking a walk in the park. It could be, just going to a coffee shop or just taking a walk down the street. So from an organizational perspective, I think it's important that we support, employees in a variety of aspects. So if we have the ability and the means, maybe we have some walking paths around the facility where people can do walking meetings, just something to get out and change their perspective. If you're not at a large facility like that, some other options include, locating your office near a park or on a street with sidewalks, and people can walk and have an exposure to a different environment. Sometimes just changing a person's visual perspective can do a lot to promote the innovation and creativity that we want to see. And finally, one other thing I think that's most important, we talked about a mindfulness initiative, and then we talked about, being supportive of work being done in places other than the office. And the third piece is really the guidelines that we have to set as an organization. So it's great to have walking paths, it's great to have meditation rooms, but as an organization, I think we need to implement some guidelines on how to utilize those. And sometimes I think, this can be as simple as, just blanketly saying, hey, everyone, scheduling allowing for it can and should participate in these activities. The other thing as well, that we could do is set up some rules and guidelines around responsiveness. So we can do that as an organization. I know that IBM has, in some cases, they shut the email off of their employees on the weekends and after 6. So that's a little bit of the work-life balance piece, but I also think it's also too resetting those norms and expectations for what it means to work at a company like that. And then, of course, and this leads into the second part of, the third and final part of the series that we'll talk about next week. This leads into, what we can do as leaders and individuals. Because you can work at a place like Google or General Mills or whoever, and they have all of these fantastic resources available. And if you want to take advantage of them, you can hit a roadblock with your manager or your coworkers or even yourself as an individual. So what we'll talk about in the third and final series, the third and final part of this series, is we'll talk about what it looks like to actually implement these kinds of things, to do these kinds of things at the team and individual level. Because ultimately, the organization can set you up with this fantastic plan, and but it comes down to individual team leadership. So how can you manage and help your team to prioritize to do the important work based on the confines of your own business environment? But then also too, it comes down to the individual. There's no amount of meditation that's gonna stop you if you want to pick up Clash of Clans and you're addicted to Clash of Clans. So there's leadership accountability, and of course there's personal accountability. So we'll talk about that in the third part of the series that we'll be exploring next week on time management. So thank you for your time. Leave me a comment on the blog post here about your thoughts, any feedback, questions, anything like that. I'm happy to answer. Thanks.